Hey, hey, good people. Welcome back to another episode of the Level Up Alliance podcast, where we're talking all things legacy, entrepreneurship, and alliances. Today, I am joined by a special guest, Annissa Obasi. I am looking forward to learning more about estate planning, and you will too, so stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of the Level Up Alliance podcast, where I have our featured guest today, Annissa Obasi, an attorney in estate planning. So I am looking forward to learning more about what it is that she does so that she can educate you as well. Welcome, Annissa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So let me ask you this. Because this podcast is about legacy building and wealth generation, and estate planning is what you do. In a brief 2 to 3 minutes, tell us, who is Annissa Obasi and how did you level up and become who you are today?
So I am many things, obviously, but I've been a licensed attorney in the state of Texas for over 27 years. My legal path has been a bit unconventional.
Okay.
But for 5 years of the 10 years that I've practiced full time, I was a Dallas County prosecutor, an assistant district attorney. And from there, left the DA's office after 5 years, did some other things, and ended up forming my own law firm. So I've been in private practice for about 2.5 years now.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. And in the process of really trying to level up, to use your term, and to focus on what I felt was my God-given purpose, I fell into this area of estate planning, which I feel is critically important, particularly for communities of color.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Now, are you originally from Texas, or what's your...
No, so I'll give you the Cliff Notes version.
Okay.
I was born on the Air Force Base in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay.
My mother's family is originally from like Kansas, Oklahoma area, so I lived in, and I usually say the thriving metropolis of Topeka, Kansas. Not really. Until I was 14, and then my mother married again into the military, and her husband... that husband got stationed in Germany.
Oh, wow.
So at the age of 14, I moved to Germany and lived there for 4 years, came back to the States, went to undergrad in Western Pennsylvania. By the time I graduated with my bachelor's degree, my brother was living here in Texas. So that's how I got to Texas.
Okay. And you've been in Texas how long now?
Ooh. So I left for a little while.
Okay.
So I was here, I think, about 5 years, and then I met and married, my now ex-husband. We left the state for about 12 years, and then I've been back since 20, I'm horrible with numbers, 10.
Okay.
So 2010. So it's been a while. I consider Texas home because it's where I've lived the majority of my adult life.
I can appreciate that. Okay, good. Look, I'm like, it makes me think, are you a Cowboys fan? But we won't go there.
I am. I am a glutton for punishment. I am a Cowboys fan. Yeah.
Well, Denver Broncos all the way. That's my hometown. So just got to represent. That's all.
I got it.
So, okay, when it comes to, I guess you said you fell in love with estate planning. What was it that drove you to fall in love with estate planning?
So, again, it was really prayer. There's a short answer, right? Okay. So I was in practice, and I believe most attorneys of color, maybe it's not fair for me to speak for everybody, but a lot of attorneys of color, we don't just become attorneys for purely financial gain, right? Mm-hmm. We feel that we have a calling and a purpose to really help improve our community and empower our community. So when I was in private practice for a couple of years, and I was just kind of taking a little bit of everything that came in the door, but I was like, Lord, I really want to focus on an area that's going to really help people, but also, I like to travel. I like shoes, right? So, I wanted an area that would also be financially practical for me as well. And I was doom scrolling one morning on Facebook and ran across this masterclass. I don't usually watch those things, but for whatever reason, this particular morning, I watched the whole hour class, and it was this basically turnkey estate planning practice. And the rest of it just kind of fell into place.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's like you said, prayer, God, just divine intervention just led you right there. That's interesting. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Now, when, for me, I'm a real estate investor. And when it comes to protecting assets, I'm a big proponent for making sure that you are structured the right way to protect all that we've worked so hard for. Now, when a person comes to you, what are some of the basic things that, whether they have real estate or not, I mean, what would you say that a person should probably do in order to prepare for coming to meet with you for an estate plan?
Sure. Well, first of all, if someone comes to me to ask for an estate plan, I'm not trying to be patronizing, but I applaud them. I admire folks who are ahead of the game, who understand that it's actually critically important for the majority of us to have some kind of plan in place. But the first place that we always start is taking an inventory. Most people believe that estate planning is only for people who are wealthy or only for people who have kids. But that's not true. I happen to believe that estate planning in some shape, form, or fashion is essential for everybody.
It is.
And so the first place that we start is to take an inventory, because most people actually have more than they think. And we're not just talking about assets, tangible assets. One of the things that we talk about in our practice group, is the fact that most of us have legacy that is worthy of ensuring is passed on to the next generation and to generations.
So good. Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
But that's about what we're, discussing here is legacy. And so when it comes to estate planning and that conversation, I think even for me, being in the insurance space as well, whether a person has a policy or not, and because people may say, well, I don't need anything because I don't have anything. I don't have kids, or I don't have property. They just feel like they don't need it outside of the fact that you can use it while you're living, insurance. But when it comes to that protection of your legacy and your plan, what do you think is the most underrated or overlooked item that people just don't think that is of value to protect? And then, like you were saying, everybody has something. So what do you think is the most overlooked?
So the short answer to that, and it's actually a more complex area of estate planning, is an instrument called a trust. And we can probably dig down into that a little bit deeper, but to kind of back up a little bit, I think that what people undervalue is everyone's goal that really, when you pass away, or when someone passes away, even if they have 25 cents to their name, there is more than likely somebody who wants it, somebody in your family who wants it. And we probably all can tell you stories about families who have fallen apart behind someone who has died, and they're fighting about, the soap dish that's shaped like a cat that was in grandmama's bathroom for 20 years. And she said she wanted me to have it. And no, I get it. And so one of our taglines is that we encourage our clients to do estate planning because we want to keep your family out of conflict and out of court. So back to your question about one of the most undervalued tools, is a trust is an excellent way. And people are familiar with wills and with powers of attorney and with living wills or medical directives, those things, because estate planning not only includes planning for what happens to your assets when you pass away, but most of us will actually be incapacitated. We'll be in a situation where we can't speak or advocate for ourselves, but still be alive. Incapacitated before, we pass on. So estate planning encompasses planning also for your incapacity prior to your death. But a trust is an instrument that keeps your family from having to probate your estate. And probate is a lawsuit. You are suing yourself after you die using your own money for the benefit of your creditors.
Wow.
And so to use a trust, or to structure a trust during your lifetime, is a way to make sure that your assets are, first of all, accounted for. Secondly, you are determining who you want those assets to pass to, or who you want to control them after you pass. And certainly you can control them during your lifetime.
Right.
But then it also avoids you and your family members having to, you sue yourself, because the provisions of the trust give all instructions regarding what happens to everything. and you don't have to continue to update it.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you guys hear that? It speaks for you when you can no longer speak for yourself. That's what a trust really does. And so I know when it comes to, because I don't want to glaze over the fact, because you and I, we've talked and,
Sure.
you know, we have that knowledge base and we understand. But for some people, even just a will, you know, going back to having a will, talk about the importance of a will, and even
the ancillary documents.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I always say something is better than nothing, right? And so it can get really, complex. Estate planning can get really complex, and it can get expensive. Now, I always say expensive depending on what you value, right? Because some people, $2,500 is expensive. Some people, $8,000, $10,000, $15,000 is not expensive if you have a substantial estate, or if you want to make sure, if that's important to you, to make sure that your family stays intact and your assets are protected. But a will is just a basic document that expresses your instructions regarding what you want to happen with yourself and with your assets when you die. Now, something that people may or may not know is that Texas is one of those states that acknowledges something called a holographic will. And a holographic will is simply your will written completely in your own handwriting. So it can't be something as simple as that. The caveats are, number one, it has to be completely in your handwriting. It can't be typewritten and then you sign at the bottom. And then it also has to clearly express that it's your will. So there's, there doesn't need to be any magic language. I think most of us are familiar with people saying, I'm in sound mind and, whatever that language is. But you can just say, this is Annissa Obasi. This is my will. I want this daughter to have this daughter to have that, this son to have that. I want to be buried here. Here is where, this is the tree in the backyard where I have, buried, right? So again, something's better than nothing. So you don't have to wait to make an appointment to go to an attorney to have a will. You can hand write out a will because no day is promised, right?
Right.
So that's the minimum. That's the minimum that I would prefer that you have. Certainly, if you want something more formal, then we encourage you to go to an estate planning attorney or someone, an estate planning professional to draft a will that is more helpful in achieving that goal of reducing conflict and potentially reducing your family having to go to court. And then what we call the ancillary documents are a power of attorney, which is used while the person is alive. So, for example, my parents are 78. My mother has dementia. My dad goes to dialysis. So there might, we're at that very real age and stage in their life where there might be things that happen to them where, the Lord doesn't call them home completely, but maybe they're not able to advocate or speak for themselves, but they still have bills. So I have a power of attorney for both of my parents. That's, again, a form that you can get online. Even a durable power of attorney allows someone to act as someone's agent or attorney in their stead. You don't give up your rights, so it's not like guardianship, like you've given your all of your legal rights away. But a power of attorney is just, if I have a power of attorney, if I give my power of attorney to someone else for like one of my children, that means that she can go to the bank and get money out just like I can, whether her name is on the account or not. One caveat is particularly what's called a durable power of attorney, which means it survives the person's incapacity. You can make those power of attorneys active only when the person becomes incapacitated. So if you don't want someone to be able to access your bank account or handle your business while you're in your right mind, you can still go ahead and draft the power of attorney now and then just make it triggered on your incapacity.
That's good.
And then the other important documents have to do with medical instructions. And there are, they are called different names. There's a living will, medical directives, medical directives of physicians, anything that has to do with medical, and then obviously HIPAA authorization. Most people are familiar with HIPAA, meaning that the government and most healthcare entities cannot share your personal medical information with just anyone. And so you want to get a set of documents that either gives doctors very specific directions about what you want to happen if you're incapacitated. For example, do you want to be on life support, or do you want to just go meet Jesus when he calls you, right?
Right.
Or you don't even have to be that specific. You can just say, I'm going to name this person who is going to be in charge of making those decisions for me when I can't make them for myself, and trust that they're going to use the knowledge that they have and make the best decision with the knowledge that they have at the time for my good.
Yes.
But really, those are that's a basic estate plan.
Okay.
A will, some type of power of attorney, and some type of medical directive and HIPAA authorization.
That is so important. Thank you for explaining that, because,
You're welcome.
I think people may feel like, oh, I've got a will, and then that's all they need, which, you explained that even a handwritten,
Yeah.
identification, letter can suffice here in Texas. But I think just from that standpoint of the ancillary documents that you mentioned, because we just don't know about that. Because even with me, I just had a daughter that she just turned 19, but that, when she became 18,
Yeah.
that transition, I'm like, I can't do the stuff that I used to. You have to step up. You're an adult now. Like, they won't talk to me, you know? So just having those things in place, I think is huge. And especially if, being part of the sandwich generation, you might have younger children you're taking care of, and parents, like you have aging parents that you're taking care of, and having those documents in place that when you're not able to, when they're not able to speak for themselves, you can speak for them on their behalf.
Yes.
So that's huge. Thank you for sharing that.
Welcome.
Now, even to that point, explain the difference between, because we talked about trusts, the revocable versus irrevocable.
Okay. So, as the name suggests, a revocable trust is a trust that you create and you can always terminate it at any time during your lifetime. An irrevocable trust is the trust that you create that you cannot terminate. And really the most significant difference besides control has to do with protection. So one of the other aspects that we talk about in estate planning, particularly when we're talking about inheritance and passing things down to your children and other generations, is that you want to plan so that your beneficiaries are protected from creditors and predators. So a revocable trust, again, is a trust that is you still have control over.
Okay.
And a lot of people, particularly when they're talking about creating, legacy, they create a revocable trust. They place their personal assets in the revocable trust. They name themselves as the trustee, and they might have, successor trustees to name, because obviously we want to plan for your contingencies. But then when they pass on, the next person in line becomes the trustee, and you can structure the trust where it automatically becomes irrevocable. And so the beneficiaries now have access to these assets that are in this irrevocable trust. And for example, if they get in a car accident, or somebody tries to sue them, or if they, have a bad relationship, or maybe they're not good with money and they've got to file for bankruptcy, because this trust is now irrevocable, the courts can't make them liquidate their assets in that trust in order to pay for, a lawsuit, or in order to pay like a spouse who's maybe seeking, a division of property or whatever.
Okay.
So that's the biggest difference.
Wow.
Is asset protection is the term we use between revocable and irrevocable.
So if a person has a revocable trust and ended up in that situation where it's an accident or whatever, and they're being sued, are you saying that is still exposed, or
potentially? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But there are degrees of and it comes down to really the level of control that the person has over the assets in the trust.
Okay.
Again, most of us set up initially a revocable trust because we still want to be able to control what happens with our assets during our lifetime. But it does not protect you from creditors and predators. Right? Because again, it's still your money.
Right.
It's just kind of in this corporate person that's known as a trust that you've created, like another child.
Okay.
You can create an irrevocable trust for yourself. Most people don't have that comfort level.
Yeah.
But you could create an irrevocable trust, and then, depending on the provisions of it, it would be more ironclad. But the benefit initially of creating a revocable trust is, number one, It does provide for some anonymity because if you have a will and you don't have a trust and your estate has to be probated, all of that is public record.
Yes.
Anything that's filed with the court is public record. So what you see, for example, are a lot of celebrities or high net worth people who have a trust, because then even if they have a will, and usually we call it a pour over will, which just says anything that I have when I die that's not already titled in the name of my trust should pour over into my trust or should be transferred into my trust.
Okay.
But you have no idea what that person's true net worth is, right? And they don't want you to know,
right?
And they don't, because that also protects their beneficiaries. You don't want people to, start, targeting. Couldn't find the word, menopause brain. You don't want people to start targeting folks based on how much money they have.
Right.
Now, obviously, they can still if they think they have some money. But the anonymity and protection is important. And then, again, the big benefit, as we talked about between a will and a trust, is a trust does not have to be probated.
Right.
So if your assets are in a trust, then your assets are transferred or handled according to the instructions of the trust, and your heirs and beneficiaries never have to go to a court to ask the court to do anything for them.
That's huge.
It is major.
Probate, because when I was a realtor, I hated that part of dealing with probate scenarios. Somebody passed away and now they've got to sell the house, and then, the child or whatever was the beneficiary and they're trying to sell the house, and now they can't move because it has to go through probate. And I'm like, okay, see you in about a year, or something,
right.
Because you can't move it, you know. So,
and to your point, if I can interrupt just a minute or interject just a minute, we talk about, again, estate planning and something that we all have to do. What we don't realize is if we don't plan, the state has a plan for us. Right? So it's called laws of intestacy. So there is a whole code in every state that says if someone dies and they don't have a will, then this is how their assets are treated. So to your point about real estate, that's what happens. And a lot of times is, in the scenario I use a lot is, Big Mama bought a house in Fair Park, right? Big Mama, Big Mama and Big Daddy bought the house probably for $20,000, right? 50 years ago in Fair Park. Big Daddy usually passes away first. Big Mama lives another 10, 15, 20 years. Big Mama passes away. No one ever transfers the title, right? So maybe a daughter or one of the siblings, one of the kids, pays the taxes on the house so we don't lose it.
Yeah.
But then that sibling, something happens to them or they pass away. Again, title is never transferred.
Right.
No one ever has picked up financial responsibility for the taxes. And that $20,000 house that Big Mama and Big Daddy bought 50 years ago in Fair Park is now going on the tax sale in Dallas County. Someone buys it, for pennies on the dollar, and they turn around, flip it, and it's now on the market in Fair Park for $400,000, $500,000. That is generational wealth that we have lost because no one has planned and nobody has taken responsibility for that. And that's the thing that's where my passion lies.
I love that you said that.
Yeah, we've got. I was thinking about this before our conversation. One of the things that I know we have to overcome as a culture is that we wear struggle as a badge. Right? Started from the bottom, now I'm here. And that's okay. We want to celebrate you if you've, brought yourself up. But struggle is really a generational curse.
It is.
Right?
Yes.
Think about other cultures. They don't celebrate that they started with nothing, right? They acknowledge, and the whole word entitlement is that I'm entitled to all of this because my mama and daddy had it and they gave it to me. And I applaud and admire that you have this podcast educating people about wealth and wealth strategies, because isn't that really the goal, is that as people of color coming from the bottom, right, most of us, that each generation has attempted to lift ourselves higher, to level up, right?
Yeah.
But why should we start from the bottom from every generation?
Come on now.
You have to, the goal is breaking that generational curse, passing on generational blessings is, why can't we have Big Mama's house that's worth now $500,000?
Yep.
And if you can sell it, you can, rent it out. You can, get an equity loan to start a business. I mean, just to have that asset. I mean, as home ownership and property ownership is the fastest way to build generational wealth.
Yes.
But again, that is one of my pet peeves. We have got to stop wearing struggle as a badge. It is a curse. Let's not struggle. Let's celebrate. Let's celebrate entitlement. Let's celebrate and make it normal, make it a new paradigm that we are setting our children up for financial success every generation. And let your grandchildren celebrate you because, oh, yeah, I'm driving this car because great grandma left it in her will or in her trust that when I graduate from college, I'm going to get a new car, right? Why? That should be the norm. Let's make that the norm.
Oh, I love that you said that. That is, like I said, that's bars right there. I mean, we're going to definitely snippet that and package it up and share it because people need to know.
Yeah.
That is so true. Now, before we get out of here, I want to make sure people know where to find you and how to get in touch with you in case they need your services.
Sure.
So tell the people where they can find you.
All right. So probably the easiest way is on my website. So my law office is called the Law Office of Annissa R. Obasi, and the website is A Obasi Law. So that's AOBASILAW.com. That's the easiest way to find me. AOBasiLaw.com.
Thank you. AOBasiLaw.com. You guys go ahead, and she drops so much information. Even if you feel like you don't have anything, everybody has an estate. Everybody has something that can be protected and identified, and she can help you get that structured as far as passing that asset over to your loved ones and making sure that you're protected and pass on that legacy and generational wealth that you've acquired and worked so hard for. So, Miss Annissa Obasi, I want to say thank you so much for coming by and sharing your knowledge with us. I wish we had a little bit more time because I could go on and dig into your brain
all day.
But I appreciate and value your time. So once again, this is the Level Up Alliance podcast. I want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already so that you don't you don't miss our next episode where you'll learn how to level up your legacy. Take care.